Hey guys, Saf here with another Raid Shadow Legends video, and today what I want to do is break down the other Asgardians that got added during the Asgard Divide event, this big event that we have going on now with all of our famous Asgardians have arrived in Teleria. So we're going to be looking at Odin Faefather, we're going to be looking at Freyja Fateweaver, and also the daily login champion by now, which you've all had a chance to play with, Loki the Deceiver. And I'm just going to go through some technical things in this video that you may not be aware of, or so you can break down the details of exactly how these abilities are going to work, because pretty much all of these Asgardians have got quite complex mechanics, have introduced brand new things that we've never seen in Raid before, including new debuffs and buffs. So it's a big thing that we've got here, lots of different things, and it's important, I think, that everyone gets an opportunity to understand the intricacies of these heroes. So we're going to start first with our father, our Faefather here, Odin. Looks pretty cool. I do love his little idol breaker here, where he kind of like the raven spawns on his wrist, kind of flies over to his wrist, which is kind of cool. Very cool weapon to him. Looks pretty strong. So Odin is the boss right now that exists within the event dungeon, that limited time dungeon where you can get pinpoint gear, and he also happens to be a playable character that you'll be able to get during summoning events. And I think the best way you're going to get him is if you try to get him from the Prism event that he's probably going to be a part of. If you really want to like try and get him, that's going to be your best opportunity, I would imagine, but it will require spending, unfortunately. That is the only downside. But what have we got here then? We've got an A1 Sting of Gungnir, attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing Berserk. It's the brand new debuff. This debuff cannot be placed on bosses. Now, I don't like this situation with heroes. I do not like it when champions have this problem where it's like, okay, on normal people, I get a Berserk. Great. When it's a boss, I just attack one time. Doesn't do anything. Like, why couldn't this be a weaken instead? At least so it's an A1 weaken or something. It just feels like my Void Legendary A1 against a boss attacks one time. It feels a bit weak. But what does Berserk do? Well, we can use this useful little interface here. Sometimes not all of this is correct. I don't really know why some of the descriptions, but let's see what it says about Berserk. Increases the damage inflicted and the damage received by 50%. So it's kind of a double-edged sword a little bit. Weaken just makes them take more damage. You like putting weaken on things, but this one you've got to be a bit more careful about, because if you place this on a damage dealer, sure, they're going to take 50% more damage, but they're also going to output 50% more damage. So you have to be extremely cautious about who receives this debuff. What this debuff is exceptionally good at is killing tanks, your Duchess, your Siffies, people who don't output damage. Therefore, it just becomes a double strength weaken. It becomes incredibly strong then. So it's quite good to use in arena. If you can use it and get it in the right place, 75% chance to place, pretty good. It's quite good. It does make him a bit of a polymorph magnet, so keep that in mind. But it is quite good. Then we have Storm of Familiars. This is a remove all buffs from all enemies. We love remove buffs from all enemies. Completely unbooked, no required. Has an 80% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense, and also has an 80% chance of placing stuns. We get a decreased defense for 2 turns, a stun for 1 turn, on a 3-turn cooldown 100% of the time, and you remove all buffs. Wow, pretty good. What more do you want from a wave control? Kind of a bit annoying in arena, because you've basically got like a lot of things that like can proc polymorph, in the sense that all of this procs polymorph, but it only rolls once per character in the battle, like once per champion, but it's still a very polymorph-esque kit so far. So that's something to be mindful of. If you're going to run him as like a debuffer with accuracy, you're probably going to need to either run resistance or avoid those 6-star polymorphs. You can also run the pinpoint on him if you want to basically get some intercept stacks so that he always has a turn, or run him alongside someone like a Wixwell or the Lamassu champion when you eventually get them, so that they can kind of give him the intercept buff so he doesn't get polymorphed. That's the only way to really avoid it. It's a pretty good ability. Wave control, amazing ability. It doesn't do any damage, so you don't have to worry about any poison clouds. This is great for Hydra as well, because if you have poison cloud and then the Wrath Head gets his increased attack or reflect buff or anything like that, you can just strip those buffs off and you won't damage yourself doing it, which is really important. Right now, the reflect buff is probably more dangerous for a lot of players in Hydra, because we can do so much more damage now in the game. So it means that reflect is hurting us quite a lot. Next up, we've got Asgardian Judgment. And now this is where things get interesting. And I say interesting from a very exotic and exciting place. This is a really good thing. Attacks one enemy, so it's only a single target. Before attacking, will steal all the buffs from the target. Again, this is a bit of a problem from Polymorph. He's probably better not in Arena, but he wants to be an Arena champion, which is kind of weird. The damage inflicted by this champion's ability depends on the target's type. So what do we mean by type? We mean this text at the top right here. Legendary support. So if you were attacking an Odin with this ability, you'd have to use the multiplier that applies to HP, support, or bosses. Now I have all the multipliers on another screen. We're going to look at that after we review the champions. We're going to go through that in detail. But what it is pretty good at, it means that if you want to do a lot of damage, you don't need to build a primary stat. That's a big deal. It means you can invest all of your damage if you want to in crit rate, crit damage. You can invest in axiom resistance because you don't need things like attack percent, defense percent, HP percent. You don't need these things. So if it's an attack-based champion, it uses the attack. Defense. If it's HP support bosses, it will do it on their max HP. The numbers are specific to HP support, which is different to bosses as well. The big thing, this attack ignores 100% of the target's defense. This is going to be probably one of the hardest hitting abilities in the game because it's pure damage and it uses enemy stats. So you can never really have a negative environment. You can't debuff this damage because unless you debuff the enemy, you can't debuff this damage. So it's really strong. And he also revives. It's so strong. Without this ability, I was like, it's a bit weak for Void Legendary. This doesn't work on bosses. This is a polymorph target, only really good for waves, and I already kind of have a good thing. This makes him Void Legendary. It's very, 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 very strong. 3-turn cooldown as well, so you can get it rolling quite a lot. Very strong. Like this in Hydra is going to wreck. It's going to do so much damage. In Clan Boss, great damage. In Arena, it depends. It really does. It depends on how much stats. You can't really control the damage, but it's 100% true damage. It's very strong. It's very, very strong for true damage. Then we get his passive, Odin's Wisdom. Every 9 turns, he's going to place a block damage buff for himself and also applies a buff spread, taking all buffs from this champion and spreading them. I did not realize that was all buffs. This is the best buff spread mechanic in the game because normally with buff spread, we've seen it in Loki. We're going to have a look at him in a moment. It's a single buff, so you can't really control it. You take all of his buffs and put it on everyone. Wow. Phenomenal. Really, really strong. And because it's every 9 turns, it's not every his 9 turns, it's every 9 turns, like we see in the event dungeon. Every time 9 turns happens in a battle, block damage, spread buffs. Boom, 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 boom. It's really, really good. Actually quite annoying in the event dungeon. And then we have this massive aura. This is a massive, massive, massive aura right now. Speed Meta is back. Speed Meta is king in Arena. Being able to stack 4 Void Legendaries and have all this speed going to be strong. The only downside is it's only Void. So we're talking Shujen, Arbiter, who's the Void Nuker, Jorgid, right? You're kind of forcing yourself into a Void window. But if all you care about is your speed lead, Arbiter Shujen, very strong, very strong. Decent base speed of 105 for Void Legendary. Base stats are okay. Considering he's based on attack, I don't expect this to do much damage. Kinda strong, and I'm going to show you why. So in terms of his stats here, his A1 is a 5 times attack, so it's not going to be special because he's got quite a weak base attack. But his A3 obviously is based on the enemy's stats. So what is the multiplier? If you attack or defense-based target, it's going to be 5 times attack. If it is a HP or support target, it will be a 0.35 HP. And if it is a boss, it hits 10% of that boss's max HP. So it's very, very good. It means you're always going to hit cap. You don't even need to try against bosses. It is a strong, strong, strong multiplier. Honestly, it's probably going to come out, like, I'm ready to look at the rankings. It's going to come out pretty high just because it's true damage, and true damage is very powerful in this mechanic. 0.35 on an enemy HP. Like, you still need to build crit damage. Got to remember this. You still need to build crit rate. All it is doing is using the enemy stats. You still need to build your champion like a damage dealer. You just don't need the primary stat. So you still need crit damage. You still need crit rate. You still need to build those things. If you build a lot of crit damage, this 0.35 is going to hurt. It's going to do a lot of damage against people like Duchesses and Sifis. It's going to wreck them. And you can see, if we change the screen here, how much damage this does. His A1 is nothing special. His A1 is quite average. You can see across the board it's average. A little bit strong in Arena, but pretty average. His A3 is insane. It is one of the hardest hitting abilities in the game. In Hydra, it's number 3 because, of course, he can hit the Head of Suffering and do 500k damage on Nightmare. Because the Head of Suffering's defense might be 13,000 defense. You don't care. He's going to do like literally 0.1 times the boss's HP. It's just, you don't even need crit damage. You can just do it. It's strong. It's incredibly strong because nothing can reduce the damage. It's going to do the flat 10%. Boom. No crit damage needed. You probably don't even need crit rate. You don't even need to build him for damage in Hydra. You can build him full support, and every so often you've got a full max HP on a single target with Hex. Very, very strong. It's not going to be like crazy damage in the sense that he's limited. So it's not going to be like Teox damage. It's not like you're going to replace your big damage dealers in Hydra, but as a support champion, he's going to outpace every support. And this is based on an individual ability without taking into consideration of debuffs, decapitation, multipliers, right? It's not taking into account Teox and other things like this. This is incredibly, incredibly powerful for Hydra. Very good for late game content where defenses are very high. Clan Boss is pretty good as well, because you've got to remember Clan Boss, the way that it works, it sets your damage at 75k when you do enemy max HP, and then you increase it on critical damage. So it's going to be pretty good for that. Arena, we're basing it on HP. It's strong. It's going to be strong. I think actually this is based on attack. So it's going to nuke any attacker. It's going to one-shot anyone you do in Arena, which means you get the revive quite often. So yeah, pretty insane damage dealer, Odin. Let's move on to Freyja Fateweaver. A bit of a different champion, more of a defense Valkyrie style thing. We've got Height Spear, I probably said that wrong. Attacks all enemies. AoE A1, we like these. This is a great Hex option. Has a 25%, books up to 40% chance to provoke. It's not great, but it's AoE. It's not great though. Counterattacks with this skill when a shield buff placed by this champion is removed by damage. Only occurs once per turn. Okay. Place a shield, breaks, you get a free A1. Not bad. But it is only a 40% provoke. A bit rough. Then we get Prismatic Aegis, places a 60% defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. 4-turn cooldown, 2 turns, 3-turn book. Pretty good uptime. You can probably keep this up all the time. Also places shield buff on all allies for 2 turns. The value of the shield is proportional to this champion's defense and each target's champion max HP. So what this means, the one part is her defense, another part will be based on the individual champion you're placing the shield on. We'll have a look at the multiplier in a moment. Then we get Gold Weave, removes all debuffs from all allies and places block debuffs on them for 2 turns, and you get a 20% turn meter fill. Pretty good Hydra option. I don't think she's like crazy good. That's the thing with her. She's not like she's going to break any rules, but you know, 40% chance to provoke, A1, good Hex target. Like, it's a pretty good Hex champion, like someone to put on Cursed. I would say it's a solid champion. We'll have to see how strong this shield is in a moment. But again, nothing is screaming like insanely unique. Then we get the passive, Divine Foresight. Now, this might change things. Increases this champion's defense for each time an ally inflicts a critical hit. So that's going to happen almost instantly. 50% more defense. 50% is quite a lot. That's a very big stack increase. That could help mitigate this problem of this damage here. Then we have an active effect that happens every 5 turns. Prevents the death of the ally with the highest crit damage, except this champion, and keeps them alive for 1 HP when hit with a fatal hit. If there are multiple champions on the team, it will only activate once. Then heal the ally by 20% and activate instant turn effect on them. Now, here's the #1 problem. It will not stop a multi-hit. If I hit you and I activate and I hit you again within the same action, they just die. It is Zinogre's passive in essence. I mean, we've already seen this champion in the game. If we head over to Shadowkin, go to Zinogre Blade Master, it's the same passive. Prevents this champion's death, keeps him alive on 1 HP. And we know if you double hit Zinogre, they die. Same as Rotus. If you double hit Rotus, they die. So it works, but it doesn't work. And I think that'll be the problem. I think what will be interesting to see is how much can we stack this to get a shield, and does she just become an incredibly great support? She's got a great base HP, base stat, base HP is great, base speed, base defense, pretty good. Good base resistance. I think she's just a little bit less exotic than the other champions we've seen in Asgard Divide so far. So her A1 multiplier is a 2.7 times defense, which is going to get increased by 50% when the passive activates. It's not crazy. It's not going to blow anyone out of the water. It's not going to be super insane, but it is going to be pretty solid. It's a solid A1. It's nothing special, I think. The A2 shields are 2.5 times defense with a 0.1 times HP. So how does this work? Well, if you've got about 8,000 defense, I think it is. If you have like 5,000 defense with a buff, give or take, 8,000 defense. I think you get like 20,000 shield. Take that and say like someone's got 20,000 health. Then they'll obviously have a 2,000 on top of this. So is it strong? It's not the biggest shield, but it's competent, especially if you have a high HP team. It's going to get stronger as well. In terms of multipliers, it's average. It's average to weak across the board. It's not going to break any boundaries. Obviously suffers a lot in Hydra, AoE. We know this. Don't expect it to be breaking any damage barriers anytime soon. Now, finally, we come to Loki the Deceiver. Very gingery Oben kind of look. Don't really know why. Kind of cool looking. Kind of like emo looking. I don't really know. Kind of opens his staff and does a bit of deceiving. Pretty cool character. We got an A1, Flames of Mischief. AoE A1 has a 30% chance of increasing the duration of all enemy debuffs by 1 turn. Books to 50%. But it goes to 70% if they're under Veil. Now, Veil is going to be the sticking point with Loki for me. Veil is very important, and I think it's his main problem. But a 70% chance to extend the duration of all enemy buffs on an A1 is incredibly good. One of the best abilities for this type of effect in the game. You can put a Hex set on him. You can build him with Cruelty. Very consistent and reliable. Then we have Deceiver's Gambit. Lots of words here. Not an attack. It only attacks once. This is a very complicated skill to understand the best way to make it work. You'll select a target. If you're selecting an enemy, it will place a block active skills and a block buffs for 2 turns on that target. If the champion is under Veil, like I said, Veil's a problem, he will also apply a debuff spread, taking 2 random debuffs from the target and place them on all enemies. So the concept being, if nobody's got a debuff, you place AoE block active skills and block buffs. That's the concept. But the problem is the Veil, and we'll see as we get to his passive why this is a big problem. Now, if you don't target an enemy, target an ally or himself, you heal them by 50%. It's a pretty strong heal, and then you will place Perfect Veil on them. So this is the opportunity for you to replace your Perfect Veil, but it comes at the cost of placing a debuff or a debuff spread. If the champion is already under Veil, then you will apply a buff spread, taking 1 random buff. So again, the concept being you have no buffs, you place it, everyone gets Veil. Doesn't really work like that. And I generally find that this buff spread is less valuable than the debuff spread. Then we have Bandit Flash, has a 75% chance of stealing all buffs from a target and 100% of their turn meter, full turn meter steal, which is another like Armand's but single target. These effects cannot be resisted if the champion is under Veil or Perfect Veil, but it doesn't guarantee that you steal Stone Skin. It might not require accuracy, but it doesn't guarantee that you steal Stone Skin. And that is a big problem in the current arena meta where a lot of champions are being run with for like a 1 turn or 2 turn Stone Skin. You can't steal those Stone Skin buffs. If the target's turn meter was not stolen, you get a turn meter fill on allies and you get an increased attack, which is nice as a support option, right? It's very rare that we have a block buffs and an increased attack for your team for a champion. Very good for Hydra. Passive effect, Misstep. He starts the round with Perfect Veil. So at this point, you're thinking, this is great. Perfect Veil, we enable the A1, the A2. The problem is he never passively applies Perfect Veil again. So you always have to make this choice, right? So you'll get Perfect Veil at the start for 2 turns. Great. In an arena setting, that's probably all you need. In a Hydra setting, that's not going to cut it. He'll also place Perfect Veil if he drops below 50%. Fine. Okay, how often does that happen? For 1 turn, it's not really reliable. And he also has a 15% chance to evade an enemy skill and all of its accompanying effects. If this champion is under Veil, the chance increases to 30%. Now, this evade is incredibly clutch. I've won live arena fights just because I evaded at the right time, but you can't depend on it. So it's kind of like an annoyance rather than something you can empower. It's just the reality of it. We have an active effect here. If his HP is below 50%, when he's targeted, his evade chance goes to 100% and all of its accompanying effects. This guaranteed evade goes on cooldown. If you're above 50% HP though, this doesn't work if you get one shot. This only applies if you get damaged whilst you're below 50%. It's kind of a bit lame, I'll be honest. I don't really think this is very useful. If it would apply when you fall below 50%, or if it was to calculate before you go to 50%, then it's quite strong because it means you can never be nuked straight out the bat. But because you have to be within the health barrier, you don't get the benefit as much. And this is the problem I have with him more than anything, is Veil. Everything needs Veil to do the things you want to do. And without the Veil, he's just a bit useless, if I'm being honest. He just doesn't quite hit home. It's just not as good. I've been trying him in Hydra because that's where I saw the best value for him. debuff spreading. I don't have crazy amounts of block buff options, right? I don't have the Two-Hander, I don't have the Firals. So block buffs is kind of useful. This is like was a big thing for my account. And then I was like, oh, but you need a Veil champion with him. Or you need someone like a Krisk or someone to extend that Veil constantly, because I always am finding myself having to use this ability on myself, and then I'm not able to spread the debuffs that I want to spread, or I can't place the block buffs when I need to place it. It's kind of a bit awkward. And he's kind of fighting this game of, am I an arena champion because I can steal some turn meter on a single target, but I can't get rid of Stone Skin, versus a Hydra champion where I get block buffs and I give people and I can debuff spread. I mean, I don't really see him much of anything else. He's not really good for clan boss, because none of these effects are valuable for clan boss at all. Maybe the increased attack for allies, but it's not great on a 4-turn cooldown. It's not like it's the best option. You could be taking a Seeker, for example. I think he might have some more uses as we learn to play with him, but right now I'm finding him a little bit difficult to get a lot of value out of. But we will get a 5-star soul. So when we get a 5-star soul that's a 5-star cruelty, could increase his value. Now, he only does attack once, but we should check his multiplier. It's a 3.6 times attack. It's going to be weak. He's not a damage dealer. He's got low base attack, low base multiplier. He's all about his effects, basically. All about his effects. So I've currently got my Loki built in sort of like a starter. I was trying him in like a supersonic set just to see how it would work as an arena counter. Just playing around with it. He's not in a brilliant build at the moment. 268 speed. I do have him booked. And my goal is now to try out different builds and probably see how is the best way to use him. I do feel like his best place is in Hydra. I just have to figure out what is the team to pair him with. Does he actually just need someone that's going to give him Veil consistently? Someone like a Duchess, which means that you're kind of like committing 2 support champions just to make 1 support champion work, which is not ideal. Or can we get like a buff extender like a Krisk and make it work that way? Or maybe a Mikage to extend the duration of the Veil, keep it up more. Potentially that could be a way to do it, but absolutely the biggest challenge with Loki and Hydra is trying to get his Veil to stay. And then Arena, it is all about the resistance of the Stone Skin. Like we can see this quite easily. If I find a fight here that I know that there will be a Stone Skin we can use him in, we can take him into this fight down here. There's absolutely going to be a Stone Skin down here. We'll bring out Carnage and we will bring in Loki. So we got the Stone Skin problem here. This is what I was trying to say. So he starts with Veil. This is great. So I could steal some turn meter potentially, but only if I get rid of the Stone Skin, right? Only if I get rid of that. So I'll steal a Strengthen here. We got the Stone Skin that time. Great. If we didn't get that, then it just loses a little bit of its value. And it's far better to bring someone that can just like smash and decrease turn meter than it is anything else. Now we can use this ability here. We could spread buffs. You can't spread Stone Skin as far as I'm aware. I could be wrong, but I don't think you can. The best bet for us to do here is to probably spread some this, block actives, and spread that over there. So now we know that the Jorgid can't do anything. And in this situation now, he is quite powerful, but does he do enough to essentially guarantee us the win? That's the question, because his buff extension here is going to do quite a lot. It is going to like keep these debuffs on these targets until they get cleansed, but nothing really stops like this. Like he's not giving us the win. Right, we're extending debuffs. He's not. I don't really feel like he's going to give us the win here. And that is my biggest complaint with him in Arena right now. I don't know if he's got enough clutch factor for us to want to invest in him. Like, we can take this here again, for example. Do that. But now I've lost the Veil. And this is the issue. I've lost the Veil now. So because of that, I haven't got any of my effects. I need full accuracy. I need full everything else. So unless you're going to pair him with a Veil, I think he's just far too limited by his own ability set. Which makes him a good champion in the right setup, but an awkward champion to get in the right setup. And I think that's the best way to look at him. Now, we can obviously give him a turn here. We can basically spread some buffs, probably just spread some buffs over here. Make him take a Veil. And now we just got to kill the ultimate Death Knight, which is probably going to take about an arm and like years. But what we can do, when the Veil, steal all the buffs. But you can't steal Veil. That's kind of annoying. I forgot about this. You actually can't steal Veil. You can remove Veil, but you can't steal it, which is a bit dumb, if you ask me. But he is quite good at like just being annoying. At least that is there. So maybe I need to play more with him in terms of like just testing him and trying out all the different mechanics. I definitely think his A1 debuff extension has a lot of value in long content like Hydra. It does have a lot of value. But we'll have to see how it goes. There you go, guys. Those are the Asgardians. Let me know in the comments below Are you excited about getting any of these Asgardians? Are you holding any of your shards? We know that there's going to be a guaranteed Freyja deck of Fate events, which I'm going to guess is towards the end of this month, end of September. So I would say if you want her, start thinking about saving some sacred shards. You're going to need about 15 to 20. Odin will... The best place to get Odin will be in his Prism event, for sure. There's going to be a Prism event. He'll be the selected hero at the top. It'll take you about 1 in 50 on average. That's the way the math works out with those types of events, depending on how good they are. The last one wasn't great, so we'll have to see how it goes. And obviously Thor is a fusion. Loki you can get for free. Which one of these Asgardians do you like the most? Now, I will say my favorite, of course, is Odin. I think this ability is so good. And he is the one more than anything I would really like to get. And for sure, he's the most expensive one to get. So that's just typical. It's on point, on topic. But he's my personal favorite. I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below what is your personal favorite. And yeah, that is the end of the video, guys. Thanks for watching as always. And I will catch you in the next video.